If you sell on Etsy, keeping up with trend forecasting can feel like a full-time job. You see a new aesthetic sprouting up, and suddenly it feels like you're missing out on growth if you aren't immediately selling it. This creates a trap. Most sellers assume they only have two options: either completely abandon the catalog they have spent months building to chase the new aesthetic, or ignore it entirely and watch their traffic drop. Right now, there are 5 macro trends rising on Etsy with remarkably low competition: colorful opaque glass, 90s vintage childhood nostalgia, functional bows, 3-dimensional ceramics, and subtle checkers. Capturing the search volume for these aesthetics does not mean you have to overhaul your entire supply chain or buy piles of untested inventory. Capturing these trends effectively depends on choosing the right strategy to integrate them into your existing business model. Whether you run a print-on-demand shop, craft handmade goods, or curate sourced items, your operational model dictates exactly how you should interact with a trend. Look at this diagram. The goal is to find the overlap between your current niche and emerging macro trends. This is contextual integration, balancing the actual cost of executing a trend against the premium pricing you can charge for it. If you force a trend into a production model that isn't built for it, you will waste capital and get zero sales. To capture high margins safely, you must measure the time and money you put in against the realistic traffic and price bump for your specific type of shop. If you sell digital downloads or use print on demand, you have a highly scalable 2-dimensional product. You can't easily alter physical supply chains, so your best option is the context and mockup method. Instead of changing what you sell, change how it's staged. Use AI styling tools or photography to rapidly swak the environment it lives in. If you sell a standard digital printable wedding menu, you don't need to redesign the typography. You just update the listing's hero image to feature the printed menu sitting next to marble resin spoons or opaque glass vases. By pulling a trend like opaque glass into the peripheral context of the photo, you elevate the perceived value and hit the search keywords without touching the core product. Cautionary: the trade-off here is that your execution has to be flawless. An artificial-looking or poorly scaled AI mockup will instantly destroy buyer trust, causing your conversion rates to drop. Context dictates price. Elevate the setting your product lives in, and you elevate the margin you can charge. Handcrafters control their manufacturing, but their primary constraint is time. If you make physical goods and cannot pivot your core skills, you use the modular add-on method. You source inexpensive, pre-made, trending materials and offer them as high-margin optional upgrades on the listings you already have. Take a standard handmade poured candle. You can keep selling the original, but add a secondary variation that comes tied with a functional, preppy ribbon bow. Alternatively, you can keep the product exactly the same, but ship it using subtle checker pattern tissue paper to capture that specific aesthetic during the unboxing experience. This does introduce operational friction. Modular options create SKU bloat, and you have to meticulously track your inventory of secondary materials like ribbons and custom packaging. By treating trends as optional accessories, handmade sellers breathe life into stagnant listings while keeping their core manufacturing pipeline totally secure. If your shop relies on external suppliers rather than building from scratch, your strongest play is the hand-picked bundle. This strategy involves sourcing distinct but aesthetically cohesive items from several different suppliers and pulling them together into a unified set. You could source 3-dimensional ceramic lemon mugs from one vendor, pair them with subtle checker tea towels from another, and list them together as a complete hosting set. Because you are grouping disparate supplier items to create a unique combination, this legally qualifies your listing for Etsy's hand-picked category. This requires significant upfront capital to test multiple suppliers, and you have to manage the logistical headache of waiting for varied shipping times before you can physically bundle the items. In this model, you aren't charging for manufacturing. You are charging a premium because you did the work of creating a completed, ready-to-use aesthetic for the buyer. Print-on-demand sellers looking to expand into high-ticket home decor like wallpaper, bedding, or shower curtains should use the 2D seamless integration strategy. This involves designing or licensing all-over patterns that blend specific trending elements. You might mix modern typography with a vintage 90s watercolor animal motif. Success in a 2D application requires strict precision. Take a look at this comparison showing the subtle checkers trend. If you miss the specific color rules, the product fails. Using a stark black and white checkerboard instead of the required soft cream and beige completely misses what the current buyer is actually looking for. When your product is simply ink printed on a flat surface, executing the exact nuanced color palette of the trend is the entire battle. Choosing a trend strategy comes down to balancing the effort required to implement it against the potential profit margin. Let's map this out. Minimal effort tweaks, like generating a 2D pattern, yield steady but smaller margin bumps. Adding physical accessories, like tying a functional bow onto a product, provides the best quick win upgrades for items you already make. Mastering logistics and presentation allows for the highest possible pricing tiers, but it demands the most upfront work. There is no single best trend to sell. There is only the best mathematical fit for your specific operational constraints. If you are a time-poor digital or POD seller, avoid sourcing physical goods entirely. Spend a weekend upgrading your mockups with AI to feature resin props and subtle checker backgrounds. If you have an established handmade shop, protect your core manufacturing pipeline. Offer functional bows or 90s nostalgia packaging as an immediate upgrade to capture trend traffic with minimal development time. If you are a capital-rich sourcing seller, the market is starved for cohesive home decor. Use your capital to handle the messy sourcing friction for 3D ceramic sets so the buyer doesn't have to. A trend only commands a premium if the context matches. Do not force a modern, trendy graphic onto an outdated, poorly lit product mockup. Stop pivoting your entire business for every passing aesthetic. Make the trends work for the business you have already built.